Good evening. Once again, Greater Indianapolis Information Incorporated brings you an interesting, informative program about our town today and tomorrow. And in the WIRE studios, we have this evening some guests with us who I'm sure you will enjoy hearing. We have Mr. Ed Pierre, architect, and we have Mr. Ted Plum, vice president of the telephone company and chairman of the Indianapolis Christmas Committee Incorporated. Also, representing Greater Indianapolis Information Incorporated is Mr. Earl Oatey, and your moderator is Bill Krunan. Mr. Oatey, I know that you have probably a lot of things to ask them, but why have these two gentlemen been chosen to be featured on this particular program?
Well, Bill, I think everyone knows how much the Christmas lighting on the circle adds to Indianapolis, so we felt that the people would be interested in knowing how the plan originated, especially since it's going to come from the men who are directly responsible for this project. So, Mr. Pierre, the first question I would like to ask is how did this plan originate, or more or less, when did it originate?
Yes, sir. The idea of lighting and decorating the Soldiers and Sailors Monument goes back to Christmas Eve in 1937.
1937. I didn't realize it was that long ago. How did this all come out of that?
Well, I was walking around the Monument Circle on Christmas Eve, as I've said, and the circle was filled with shoppers. The stores were lighted. A light could be seen through the stained glass windows of Christ Church, but the monument itself was in total darkness. I thought that was too bad to have such a situation, and I made a resolution that someday the monument should fulfill its function at Christmas time. Another Christmas comes and goes, and nothing is done. But in 1939, something is started. At the annual Christmas party of the Construction League of Indianapolis, a miniature nativity scene is brought into the meeting and uncovered, and 175 people subscribe $1 apiece. Several days later, the scene is moved to the Riviera Club, where the John Holiday Post of the American Legion is holding its annual Christmas party for the children of the Knightstown home. A resolution is passed to promote peace on earth, goodwill toward men. The resolution proposed that a fund be raised for placing a life-size nativity scene on the Soldiers and Sailors Monument at Christmas time. Later, the American Legion Peace Symbol Foundation was formed to administer the affairs of the project. A mural painter happened to be in town doing work on the State Library and Fendrick's restaurant, and Mr. John Scott Williams, and he donated a sketch of a nativity scene.
I'd like to interrupt you just a minute, Mr. Pierre. Is this same nativity scene that he originated the one that we're using today?
Almost to a detail.
I was wondering about that, whether they changed each year a little bit or whether you kept the same format.
It's practically the same as it was when it started. On December 7th, you may remember, was Pearl Harbor Day, and all promotional work stopped. And for 5 years, nothing was done on the project. It looked like the end of a perfect dream. As a last resource, a meeting is held in Wallace O. Lee's office, and J.I. Holcomb, Paul Brown, the park board, and other employees and myself attended. The Christmas project was taking on new life. Meetings with prominent artists, decorators, and architects were held. There were many meetings. Among those attending were Emery Sharp, Paul Brown, Fran Schroeder, Chelsea Stewart, and many others. Particular credit is due to such concerns as the Nyman Transfer Company, who each year erect the signs on the monument. Another 8 years of heartbreaking failure, the Christmas scene of 1945 saw the monument lighted and decorated. The Soldiers and Sailors Monument becomes a symbol of peace on earth. The Indianapolis Christmas Committee was incorporated in April 1947.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's certainly interesting. In other words, you mean for 8 years you were working on this plan, and then it materialized.
That's correct.
That's a lot of work.
That's real stick-to-itiveness, isn't it?
It certainly is. I know when you look at that that Monument Circle around Christmas time and the warmth that it brings to downtown Indianapolis. I think we more or less take it for granted that it just originated in, say, a month before December, and then in December we started it.
That seems that way, but I'm sure that people who worked on this type of thing know that Mr. Pierre must have had a lot of work involved in this, to promote what we have here. Particularly the people from out of town, Earl, who come here and see it are amazed, aren't they?
I think they are. I know they are. Another thing it proves is that, these things just don't happen. You have to stick to them, and certainly Mr. Pierre stuck to it. Mr. Plum, as I understand, you are the director this year.
I'm the chairman of this year's committee.
You're
yes,
the
sir.
chairman.
That's right.
What does that entail?
Well, as the chairman of the committee, I try to coordinate the various activities which are required to get this particular display erected and the program set up.
That sounds like it's quite a job in itself.
Well, as a matter of fact, we have a tremendous amount of very capable help. We break this committee down into committees, subcommittees. For example, the design committee is under the very capable leadership of Fran Schroeder and Renzi Hamilton. And those two, together with a lot of help from the police and fire department and the park board, arrange for the erection of the nativity scene and the toyland scene in the two basins of the monument.
About how long does it take to get this all set up?
It takes just about a month.
About a month.
With all of the help that we can get. And then we have some excellent people working on that display. I might mention, just as a matter of interest, the display in the toyland scene this year will be somewhat different than it was last year. You may recall last year we had the Santa Claus with the television monitoring set.
Mm-hmm.
This year we're going to have a rocket to the moon. And we think that this will be a real pleasure for the youngsters. We'll have the rocket with Santa Claus in the cockpit with some of the comic strip characters looking out the window.
Mm-hmm.
And this rocket will be activated a little bit, and it'll be pointing toward a moon, which will be up some 18 or 20 or 30 feet in the air. Over in one portion of the front basin will be a half of the Earth, the North Pole being illustrated with Santa Claus's workshop.
Mm-hmm.
And the theory will be that Christmas is around the universe as well as around the world here.
That's wonderful.
We think it's going to be a very interesting display. And of course, in the other basin will be the nativity scene, which is fairly easy. It's something which we don't change much, though this year we will have some new camels.
Mm-hmm.
We have bought some new three-dimension camels.
Three-dimensional?
Yes, instead of the cardboard or wooden camels which we've used in the past. It's going to be a real nice display.
That certainly sounds like it's going to be a nice one.
Then there's the program committee, which is headed up by Mr. A.J. Thatcher and Mr. Evan Walker. And they work out the program for the dedication service, which will be held on December 15th on the south steps of the monument. The program from then on will have singing, the various choral groups, which Mrs. Smith of the park department arranges for, to come in and sing at noon and sometime during the afternoon.
I was going to ask you about that. You've already answered my question.
We have one other thing that I think is of interest this year that Mr. Schroeder and Mr. Hamilton have come up with. Around the perimeter of the monument where we had the candles last year, those same things will be used but arranged as stick candy with red and white cellophane going up.
Mm-hmm.
We have arranged to have some 24 different youth agencies prepare a little plaque, which they will come down, and starting about the 28th of November, carrying on through to about the 14th or 13th of December, they will erect these plaques on these various candy sticks with some little demonstration. We think this will get greater participation. We believe that the youth aspect of it will be a real help to us.
Bill, did you have anything you would like to ask?
Earl, I've been so intrigued by this particular talk here that I've just been wondering so many things can happen here. I think the biggest thing that I would like to do is to ask everybody and urge everybody to go downtown and see this display, because these people I know have gone to a lot of work and a lot of thought and a lot of expense to erect this for all of us here in Indianapolis. And I know my children have been asking me to take them downtown and drive around the circle, especially at night because of the tremendous lighting. Guys, the lighting is just so nice, and I'm sure you have planned on that. Could you tell us a little bit about the lighting? And also, I'd like to know a little bit about how it's financed, if you could, Mr. Plum.
Well, the lighting, of course, is we have purchased over the years spotlights, and we have a new a rheostat light, which will be used this year for the first time on the nativity scene, which will give it a little rise and fall. The financing of it is done through public subscription. That is, we write letters out to civic organizations. Any citizen who wants to participate in this thing can make a contribution. We, as a matter of fact, would like to get a little more money. We can always use a little. Anyone who wishes to make a contribution certainly could feel free to do so, and of course it's a tax-deductible contribution.
What might interrupt, where would they send this contribution?
They could send the contribution to Mr. Francis Poland, who is the treasurer of the committee, at 130 East Market Street, People's Bank and Trust Company.
Good. Earl, do you have anything else? I noticed one thing that they've had from year to year. They've even started heating the area there for the singers. They're going to continue with that, I guess. They have a heating unit there.
Yes, we probably will.
Okay.
You can never depend on the winter.
Not
the
here.
Weather out
No,
there.
that's for sure. It's very unpredictable. I would like to get back, if I might, to Ed Pierre, if I could, Earl.
Certainly.
Because in thinking about this, I know that at least I've been told that it was incorporated, and I'd like to know when we introduced Mr. Plum, it said incorporated, when they were incorporated, and also who the chairmen have been through the past years, because I can imagine it probably reads like a who's who of Indianapolis. Ed, could you tell us that?
I believe it was incorporated in 1945 or 46. And we are very proud of the chairman of this committee. Started with Mr. J.I. Holcomb, Harry Wade, Harry Pritchard, William A. Hanley, Dr. M.O. Ross, William P. Flynn, Samuel R. Sutphen, Mr. Cremendall, Robert A. Gallagher, Dr. Eileen Esch, Wallace O. Lee, Charles Wagner, Edward F. Galliou, Paul Pitts, and this year, Mr. Plum.
That certainly reads like who's who. in
I've
my
heard of all of them.
estimation.
I've heard of all of them, haven't you? Earl, at Greater Indianapolis Information Incorporated, I know, is interested in this project. Do you have anything to say from that particular organization?
Well, I would say this: we are definitely 100% behind this organization that's putting on the Christmas lighting, and I feel that it's the type of plan that everyone in Indianapolis is for. It's more or less like our organization. No one is against it; everyone is for it. And certainly something that is as enjoyable as the Christmas lighting on the circle. You don't have to urge people too much to come down and look at it, because I know in past years, I'm down there every year taking my children to look at it, and it's just a long line of cars to get down there. It's one of the few lines that you really enjoy being in.
That's very true, Earl, and the purpose of Greater Indianapolis Information Incorporated, which you've said before on this program, is to promote the physical improvements in the city and tell people about them. And this is surely one of the highlights of the city of Indianapolis, this decoration on the monument. And I sincerely want to thank you, Earl Oatey, for being here representing Greater Indianapolis Information Incorporated, and Mr. Ed Pierre, local architect, who had the idea and who you heard from, and Mr. Ted Plum, vice president of the telephone company, who is chairman of the Indianapolis Christmas Committee Incorporated, and who urges you to enjoy the decorations on the circle. And your moderator this evening has been Bill Krunan. Good evening.